Westminster Theological Seminary's first church history professor was a man named Paul Wooley. Paul Wooley was the reason that Westminster Theological Seminary had a strong church history program to begin with, and it's the reason that we have a strong church history program today. We even have a PhD in church history at Westminster Theological Seminary, which is something rare for Protestant Reformed evangelical seminaries. So we do church history at the highest order. But what's interesting about Paul Wooley was that he was very influential to a certain student named Harold Ockingay. Now, Harold Ockingay, after he graduated from Westminster Theological Seminary, went on to help found both Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary and Fuller Theological Seminary. When Fuller Theological Seminary was started, they asked Paul Wooley if he would like to head up their church history program. What's interesting is that Paul Wooley declined, not because he had anything against Fuller Theological Seminary, but he did not want to teach for a school that understood itself only to be called evangelical. He thought that that was too broad, too wide of a term for a seminary to hold as far as its tenets and its statutes or its theological posture. So he continued to teach at Westminster because it understood itself as self-consciously reformed and biblical and confessional. And so we thank Paul Wooley for continuing to teach at Westminster Theological Seminary because we have a strong church history program because of that move he made in the past. We have a strong one today. Nebby Stonehouse was a New Testament theologian that had degrees from Calvin and Princeton Theological Seminary. He started the New Testament program at Westminster Theological Seminary, and he was trained under a man named Gerhardus Voss. Gerhardus Voss taught Nebby Stonehouse how to do his redemptive historical hermeneutic, which he brought from Princeton to Westminster Theological Seminary. So ever since the very beginning of Westminster's program, we've been doing a redemptive historical hermeneutic. It's nothing new to Westminster. And Nebby Stonehouse in particular was an expert in the Synoptic Gospels. Nebby Stonehouse wrote a book on the Synoptic Gospels, and what's interesting about that book is Nebby Stonehouse doesn't just employ a classical harmonizational approach to the Synoptic Gospels. Instead, he sees the differences of each of the Gospels, pointing to different truths about Jesus Christ that are, they're historical, but they emphasize different facets of the same diamond. And so it was sort of multi-perspectival. You could put it in that way, in those words, but he didn't actually use that phrase. Now, what's interesting about Nebby Stonehouse, other than the fact that he was the New Testament professor at Westminster Theological Seminary when it began, is Nebby Stonehouse was very influential to a Pauline scholar named Herman Ritterboss. And Herman Ritterboss, every single time he would come to give guest lectures at Westminster Theological Seminary, he would stay with Nebby Stonehouse and his wife. And they would speak Dutch to each other over the dinner table. The other interesting thing about Nebby Stonehouse is he is the character in Westminster's history that had to go get John Murray out of jail when John Murray was arrested for walking around the Westminster's grounds late at night in what the police thought were bummy clothes. So they thought that John Murray was a bum trying to break into Westminster, so they arrested John Murray, and he didn't have any of his identification on, so Nebby Stonehouse had to come and get him out of jail and actually speak on his behalf of saying, yes, John Murray is the professor of systematics at Westminster Theological Seminary. And so that's an interesting story. But overall, Nebby Stonehouse is one of the reasons that we have at Westminster a full-blown Vossian view of the Old Testament's relation to the New Testament. And Nebby Stonehouse was an excellent scholar in showing what Voss started to show, which was how does Jesus Christ disclose who he is in light of the rest of the canon. And so in other words, in the Synoptic Gospels, when Jesus performs miracles, it's not just that he's trying to be somebody who's got a couple of tricks up his sleeve, but Jesus Christ is disclosing who he is in light of all of creation. For instance, when Jesus Christ walks on the water, Nebby Stonehouse will talk about how Jesus Christ is disclosing who he is in light of all the water motifs in the Old Testament, so that he shows his apostles, who are going to be his witnesses, what he is in a full-orbed canonical sense. Cornelius Van Til did not want to teach at Westminster Theological Seminary. He just wanted to be a pastor of a small church in Michigan, and that's it. And what was interesting is Machen wanted Van Til to head up the apologetics department at Westminster, and so he got Stonehouse to get on a train to go convince Van Til to come teach at Westminster. And he told Stonehouse no, and Stonehouse came back to Westminster, or came back to Philadelphia empty-handed. So Machen himself got on a train, went out to Michigan, and then he convinced Van Til to come and teach at Westminster. And the interesting thing is that when Van Til came, he liked teaching so much that he ended up teaching here for the rest of his career, and he's actually buried in Glenside, Pennsylvania, just a mile and a half away from the school. And so, but Van Til, the reason why Machen wanted Van Til is because Machen saw that Van Til taught apologetics in a different way than what was the usual way of how apologetics was approached at a place like Princeton. Machen saw that Van Til could penetrate the deep structures of philosophical thought when it came to apologetics. But not only that he could do it in a way that it permeated the rest of the disciplines. And so apologetics became a sort of foundational area for every single distinctive that Westminster teaches. So apologetics was crucial for our understanding of New Testament. Apologetics was crucial for our understanding of the Old Testament and for systematics. Apologetics fit in, and it permeated all the disciplines. It wasn't just sort of an elective for philosophical majors or for philosophy majors. Instead, it was something that every pastor should be able to do, and do it at the deepest level.